Welcome back! It's a beautiful day. The birds are singing and the sun is shining and everything is fine. Okay, on the real. Hi everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, a place where I talk about things that absolutely nobody asked me to talk about. And you know, I actually wanted to come back and do some videos. I had written the scripts for about 5 different videos. But to be honest, after the emotional roller coaster that was the election, I kind of didn't really have the energy to come back and do videos. I think I just needed a break from social media as a whole for my own mental health, and I think that a lot of people can relate. But since I was dragged out of my hiatus because of the amount of bullshit that is happening in the political sphere, if you saw my first video a couple months back about Trump's attempted coup, you already know that I've been keeping my eye on Donald Trump, his followers, the Republican Party as a whole, the evangelicals, because I want to see where this coup attempt is going and the rhetoric that's supporting it and enabling it. We've seen some pretty hilarious reactions to Donald Trump's loss of the election.
The Biden crime family stealing the election! The media's covering up! The Biden crime family stealing this election! The media's covering it up! The Biden crime family stealing this election! The media's covering up! We want our freedom for the world! Give us our freedom, Joe Biden! Joe Biden's covering up this election! He's stealing it!
Where were we? What was the last question?
But to be honest, the situation on the whole isn't funny. It's actually really dangerous, and everyone should be talking about what's going on, which I guess is why I'm here. Hey. As a quick disclaimer, I'm going to be talking about some pretty heavy topics around politics and political violence, and if I use any humor while doing this video, it's not because I don't take these topics seriously. It's just kind of my way to process everything that's going on and present it in a way that, at least to me, makes sense. I also apologize ahead of time if you hear my dog and my cats making noise in the background. They just really like to be around me. They're so obsessed with me. So let's do a little recap. In a previous video, I talked about how for months Donald Trump had been gearing up and getting ready to delegitimize the election. He had been talking a lot about mail-in ballots, how they were a big avenue for people to cheat, how mail-in voting was going to rig the election against him. I talked about how he had his appointee to the Postal Service remove mailboxes from Democrat-heavy zip codes in an attempt to suppress the vote, because Democrats were more likely than Republicans to do mail-in voting because they are more likely to take the threat of COVID-19 seriously. And I also talked about how he pushed forward the appointment of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court in hopes that if an election dispute arose and had to go to the Supreme Court, he would have the court in his favor. I also talked about how the rise of evangelicalism and its ties with the Republican Party have led to a really large amount of US voters becoming radicalized, blending politics and religion in ways that we haven't really seen in America's history. And people are made to believe that the choice between Democrats and Republicans on their voting ticket is less about politics and more about a spiritual war taking place in the United States. So why am I bringing this up? Well, there are a lot of liberals and people in conservative media, and also a lot of enlightened moderates, who like to downplay the seriousness of Donald Trump's rhetoric. Seriously, I've had conversations with people who, when they hear something like, well, Donald Trump's rhetoric is radicalizing people and makes it more likely for them to commit acts of violence, they'll say things like,
"Oh, you're just being an alarmist."
"Oh, Donald Trump didn't really mean that."
Or,
"Oh, please, I really doubt that that's the case. I highly doubt that anybody is going to go out there and do XYZ.
But in the meantime, on Trump's social media, not Trump's social media, I mean the Trump side of, you know what I'm trying to say. God fucking. People have been talking about martial law and arming themselves and taking themselves to Washington, D.C. with the goal of forcefully keeping Donald Trump in the presidency. But it's not just random people on the internet, also people in power, Republican politicians and Democrat politicians have been saying things like that. Back in November, an unnamed Republican official told the Washington Post that we should all just humor Trump crying about election fraud because, and I quote, "It's not like he's plotting how to prevent Biden from taking power on January 20th. Okay, so, like, what the fuck has what has Trump been doing this whole time? And I ask that legitimately because he hasn't been making that's my dog, sorry. He hasn't been making public appearances. Mike Pence has been out here celebrating Space Force. Rudy Giuliani has been melting on camera for the cause. Kayleigh Kayleigh out here doing press conferences about election fraud. But what has Donald Trump been doing? His schedule has been clean. He hasn't had any meetings. At least there's been no public meetings, no public appearances that he's been making. We're in the middle of a crisis of health, and we're also in the middle of a crisis of cybersecurity. We just had a massive Russian hack, and we also have the ongoing COVID crisis, and he's been nowhere to be seen. Like, Trump quit his job. He quit his job, like, the day after the election. Like, he stopped being president. Everybody else in his team have a job except for him. The little bit of information that we're getting about what Donald Trump is doing is disturbing. Sources have been saying that Donald Trump has been having private meetings talking about the possibility of enacting martial law and seizing voting machines, all in an attempt to overturn the election or to force a new election, one that for him would preferably result in him winning. Does it sound like dictator shit to you? He wants to put Sidney Powell, a woman who once retweeted a message that said that Biden and Harris should be executed, as part of a special counsel to investigate election fraud. Mind you, the courts have already heard the evidence. The evidence is out there. Like, you can go see the evidence of election fraud, the supposed evidence of election fraud. There is no evidence. That's why the courts have been ruling against Donald Trump and his team. This woman is so batshit crazy that Rudy Giuliani, a man who melted on camera last month, thinks she's too embarrassing to be on the Trump's legal team. And yet there she is. And yet a bunch of batshit crazy people are next to Trump in the White House, in his ear, talking about the ways that he can forcibly stay in power. Here is Michael Flynn saying that martial law is no big deal and we shouldn't get so worked up about it.
He could immediately, on his order, seize every single one of these machines around the country on his order. Within the swing states, if he wanted to, he could take military capabilities and basically rerun an election in each of those states. I mean, it's not unprecedented. I mean, these people out there talking about martial law, it's like it's something that we've never done. Martial law has been instituted 64 times.
Here he is again tweeting out a rallying call for Donald Trump to enact martial law. Here we have a Republican who's saying that it's no big deal if Donald Trump has been talking about enacting martial law because it's not like he actually did it.
Well, let me just tell you, I've been in Congress for 3 years, and for 3 years I keep hearing all of these worst-case scenarios. We have to remember it was a conversation, not a revolution. There are far more important things in front of us, and I think we need to move on and tackle them.
But that's all you have to say to that? I mean, I understand there are far more important issues, and we had you on to talk about COVID, and we will in a second. But we can't just grow numb to incidents that would happen in a third world country, and we would have a State Department that would be alarmed about hearing these types of reports.
Listen, you're talking about a conversation that reportedly took place. We don't know anything about the details, and you just can't get me all riled up about that.
Does it bother you?
It bothers me that it's such a big deal to so many people who know nothing about the facts and know nothing about the details.
We have a man who's spelling out for us his plans, what he wants to do, and people just brush it under the rug. Sources at the Pentagon have been saying that military officials don't want to be near the White House because they're just so afraid of the crazy shit that Donald Trump is asking and saying. They just don't want to be a part of it. In fact, the military had to issue a statement saying that they have no role and will not have any role in the U.S. elections. I mean, God, this is what's happening in America. And it's not like the Republican Party gives a shit? Apparently they don't, because most of the Republican Party has either been completely silent or they've been actively encouraging this type of behavior. I mean, what? Like we've heard from Mitt Romney, a Republican governor or two, who has only spoken out because they themselves have been threatened by Trump supporters, threatened with acts of violence, sexual assault, I mean, like crazy stuff, and that's the only reason why they're speaking out. But the vast majority of the Republican Party has been silent, and they're complicit in what it is that Donald Trump is doing. We need to stop pretending like the Republican Party is some God-fearing, apple pie-eating, all-American group of politicians who just care about conservative values. Like that's not what the Republican Party has become. It's not what they've ever been. And especially now, the Republican Party has devolved into authoritarianism. They've shown through their actions that they care more about maintaining power and making sure that minorities never achieve equity. The Republican Party is not going to make it easy for the Biden-Harris administration to get anything done. They're going to be actively working against the new administration to make sure that financial aid and healthcare doesn't reach American citizens, leaving the public desperate. And when people are desperate, they're more susceptible to somebody like Donald Trump, to somebody who is some outsider who's here to fix all of our problems, this pseudo-religious type of figure who has come in to drain the swamp, whatever the fuck that is that means, and leaving us susceptible to fascism. And the scary thing is that when you have Donald Trump doing something like tweeting out like what he tweeted, where he was like, oh, come January, we're gonna have all of these protests, they're gonna be wild. People take that as a rallying cry to avenge Trump. Like look at this shit. Like, look at this stuff that I found just on surface web, no searching. I didn't have to dig through all of these posts. Like, this was just like the front page of like one of the most popular Donald Trump forums. People making contingency plans and spreading tutorials of how to assemble your guns. People talking about how you need to prep food and water and this and that, so that when we go out and we storm DC and we're armed and ready to kill people if we have to. I mean, like, that is what they're like, not just Donald Trump, but like the Republican Party, their crazy religious fanaticism, like that is what they have brought on themselves. And then you have Republican politicians who like they didn't care when it was Democrats who were being threatened with violence. They didn't care when that one senator, or like in Michigan, when there was like a kidnapping plot. Like, nobody gave a fuck. Nobody gave a fuck when LGBT people were more susceptible to hate crimes due to Donald Trump's presidency. They didn't care when Hispanic women at the border were being forcibly sterilized. They didn't care that hate crimes were on the rise towards people of color. There was this rise of xenophobia. They didn't give a shit that the KKK and all of these fascist, racist, neo-Nazi groups were supporting them and backing them. All this fine people bullshit. Like, they didn't care. They only cared about the stuff that Donald Trump was saying when it personally affected them, because they had no empathy for everybody else who was out here who was genuinely afraid because of the color of their skin, because of their ethnicity, because of who they love. They were genuinely afraid of violence because of the rhetoric that this administration has put out there, because of all of the apologism, like all of this racism apologism of like, well, he's not like really racist, you know. He didn't say that all Mexicans were rapists and murderers, only the illegal ones. It just gives me a fucking headache. And like, this is the violence that has occurred, and we're here now, and people want to make sure that they are there and violent on Inauguration Day. It's fucking exhausting. Like, that's the reason why I'm making this video. I'm so tired. I'm tired of the general public gaslighting everybody else who sees what the fanatics are doing. And it's not like it's some small group of fanatics on the internet. I mean, the FBI has classified a lot of these pro-Trump groups as terrorist cells, like QAnon and the Proud Boys, and I mean, they're hate groups with the potential of actual domestic terrorism. And do I think Trump's coup is gonna succeed? No, of course not. He's a fucking idiot. But Whether or not his coup attempt is successful doesn't really matter because the damage has already been done to this country. 70 million Americans in this country decided that Donald Trump's racism and xenophobia and misogyny, his rape allegations from women and children, the disgusting way that he's talked about women and children, his own daughter, all of the lying and the bigotry, like that was no big deal. That was no big deal to every single person who voted for Trump. All they cared about was the fact that Donald Trump made them feel good about their anti-abortion vote. And that is part of the damage that has been done to this country, is that people don't care. People don't care about other people. Half of them believe that the election was stolen, was rigged by Democrats and Hugo Chavez's ghost. Those people have lost faith in American democracy. They don't believe in American democracy. And out of those people, a large chunk of them have been radicalized to the point where they're openly talking about killing people, killing liberals. We as a country are living with a trauma that's going to affect us for a very long time. And one of the most important, at least to me, one of the most important traumas that we have to deal with is that democracy only barely won in this election. It only barely won, and Trump's a fucking idiot. And when the GOP puts forward a more competent candidate, all of that radicalized voter base is going to be right behind them, begging for coup number 2, because they believe that it is their religious duty and their patriotic duty to make sure that Democrats never hold any power in this country. So who knows if next time we'll be able to even hold on to the democratic process. I feel like this was a rant video mostly, but I needed to just get it off of my chest because I'm so tired. I'm so tired of people acting and pretending like all of this that's happening is normal or it's just a difference in opinion. It's not a difference of opinion. If you're a Trump supporter and you support a man who, because of his rhetoric, because of his politics, whatever, he encourages hate crimes, he encourages people who are already disenfranchised, people who are already struggling to be victims of white supremacy, to be left out to die from COVID-19, and people just want to be like, well, it's just my fucking opinion, you know, it's just my opinion because I'm a good Christian and I'm just voting for Republicans because just, you know, all of these babies are being murdered at Planned Parenthood. You know, like people have this, I mean, it's just like this cognitive dissonance. You know, it's so beyond that. And I'm so tired of people not being able to see beyond one small political issue. Most of Trump's voter base is full of people who are just single issue voters who don't care about the rest of us. And then on the Democratic side, on the liberal side, whatever, it's just full of people who refuse to call it like it is. It's fascism. It's a coup. We are living right now in an America where the President of the United States is having conversations about using the military to seize voting machines and keep him in power. That's where the United States is. Everyone's faith in democracy has diminished. Whether you're a Trump supporter who believes that the election was stolen, or you're somebody like me who is horrified at the fact that democracy is only hanging on by a thread. I honestly don't even know how to end this video, but I hope everybody stays safe. I hope everybody stays healthy, and God, I hope my next video is a BTS video.